Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Darvell. I'm coming back with it another time. One thing I want to talk about very quickly is that Trump actually proves that presidents can do what they keep telling us they can't. So, why do I say this? Darvell, where are you coming from with this? What's the point? Let me make a very clear statement about Donald Trump that I want you to be aware of as I go into this. I am not a supporter of Trump. I am not here to hate on people who support Trump. I am not here to create a problem about Trump. This is about comparing Donald Trump's immediate actions over the first week to those of the past, let's say 2 or 3 presidents, right? Especially when they come relative to certain demographics of voters who supported said presidents, right? But let's look at a quick graphic coming from USA Today. Looking at this chart that we can see here, Donald Trump 2025 already day one had 26 executive orders he put out. As of January 2022, or January 22nd, he had 28. So he already had a couple more in the bag the next day. Overall, or over the next 2 days. Overall, Donald Trump has put out over 33 executive orders in his first week, 26 on the first day, 1 on the next consecutive 2 days, 4 on the Thursday, and then 1 on that Friday. So he's gotten 33 out the gate. Compare that to Biden. Biden did 9 on his first day, 8 on his second day, 2 on the next 2 days, and 1 on the final day of the week, totaling 23. Biden got 23 executive orders out in the first week, whereas Trump got out over 33. And so with that being said, Obama's not even in the same running as neither of these people. Obama only got 9 out on his first week. He got 2 on his first day, on his first term, 3 on the second day, 4 on the third day, and didn't do any more for the next 2 weeks. I'm not saying that this is a competition of the number. What I'm saying is that this is a testament to kind of, if you come in with a plan, you're going to want to execute that plan as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And I'm not talking about Trump writing a bunch of executive orders to just simply get rid of things that Biden did. No, he did that all in one order. See, to be clear, we're looking at a list of all the executive orders right here that Trump wrote within the first week of his presidency. The first one he wrote was a single executive order that's called the initial rescissions of harmful executive orders and actions. This was the first one he signed, and it alone got rid of over 68 executive orders that Biden had written. So you don't need to write a bunch of executive orders to get rid of what the past president has done. You can just write one and get rid of everything he's done, or at least 68 of the things he's done. And so with that being said, one of the things that we see that was eradicated by the first EO of Trump was a number of executive orders that were focused on certain demographics or subsets of the society in America. Specifically, he wrote one that abolished the advancing equity, justice, and opportunity for Asian Americans. He wrote another one that abolished the Biden wrote these two and then Trump rescinded them. But another one of those was advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities. And yet another one was advancing equity or equality for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex individuals. And another one was a White House Council on Gender Policy. And then another one was preventing and combating discrimination on basis of gender identity. Biden wrote all of these to try to find a way to immediately deal with the issues in American society that were popping up for Asian Americans, LGBTQIA, and people with different gender identities, as well as what he described as underserved communities. So executive orders, immediately you see, can be specifically written to support certain groups of people. Don't get it twisted that they can't. Now, yet, with that being said, when we look at all the executive orders, you can be right in knowing that, yeah, executive orders can't do everything. A third of the ones that Trump has written are really just virtue signaling, and they can't make a difference in and of themselves, but they direct other people to do things differently in the executive cabinet, as far as those who lead other departments that have influence over American society. Another third of those are basically illegal or unconstitutional. Specifically, we know an example around his intent to remove or to restrict birthright citizenship. You've seen that immediately went to the courts and got struck down. And then the last one we seen was the last third, rather, of the executive orders that he's written have an immediate, hard, and fast impact that is well within the scope of authority of the president. So there is no challenging those. They just are what they are. And I want to give you examples of all three of those. So one of those was essentially the rescission of birthright citizenship. We know that the courts were immediately petitioned to weigh in on that, and that was immediately struck down, or it was immediately suspended by the courts. So that didn't get enforced for very long. The second one that I want to show you that has to do with um, the president not having direct control over something, but having control over a person is this one. Let's go ahead and look at it real quickly. And it is the death penalty. Okay. So the fourth executive order he wrote or signed was restoring the death penalty and protecting public safety. So what does that look like? Let's go up here and look at the actual piece on the White House website, because the Federal Register doesn't have any of these listed yet. So we're still waiting for the Federal Register to update. But on January 20th, an executive order was issued by President Donald J. Trump to restore the death penalty and protect public safety. You telling me that you didn't think the death penalty had been eliminated. And you're right. It hadn't been eliminated. What had happened is that there was a prior executive order by Biden that just told the Department of Justice and whatnot to just basically don't kill anybody. Just choose not to do it, right? You can just tell your departments that are led by your appointees to just not do certain things, even though they have the legal authority to do them. See, that's the thing. You can choose to not be an a-hole. I'm not saying that being that the death penalty is an a-hole move. What I'm saying is you can tell the government to do something differently within the lane of authority that they have without actually needing a congressional bill to be passed. So what did he do with this restoring death penalty and protecting public safety executive order? What did he actually do? Well, very clearly and very succinctly, Donald Trump identified that politicians and judges who oppose capital punishment have defied and subverted laws of the country, and at every turn they sought to thwart the execution of the lawfully imposed capital sentence and chose to enforce their personal beliefs rather than just follow the law. And then when Biden took office in 2021, he allowed the Department of Justice to issue a moratorium on federal executions. Look at that. The Department of Justice issued a moratorium on federal executions. That didn't require no act of Congress. So he allowed the Department of Justice to do that, and that was, in Trump's opinion, defiance of his duty to faithfully execute the laws of the U.S. Then on December 23rd, 2024, before Biden actually left office, Biden commuted the sentence of 37 of the 40 most, let's say, violent criminals who were on death row. So Trump identifies them as such, as written here, which I won't repeat, but he said that 37 of the 40 people who had committed some of the worst crimes were commuted, had their sentences commuted by Biden right before Biden left office. And so Trump wouldn't like that, right? So what did Trump do? Well, Trump did something very clear. In Section 3 of this executive order, item E or clause E, Trump simply said that the Attorney General shall evaluate the places of imprisonment and conditions of confinement for each of the 37 murderers whose federal death sentences were commuted by President Biden, and that the Attorney General shall take all lawful and appropriate action to ensure that these offenders are imprisoned in conditions consistent with the monstrosity of their crimes and the threats they pose. So what Trump basically said is, well, if Biden's going to say we can't kill him, we're going to find a different way to throw him under the prison. I'm telling Biden told his attorney general through this executive order to pursue determining the worst conditions in the entire federal prison system where they are, and then take these people and put them in the worst prisons. I promise you, this is probably one of the most quiet things that he's done in the entire week. I don't think a lot of people are going to be talking about what this man just wrote in here, which is almost as crazy as many people think he is. He literally took people who have been in prison and were on death row and told the attorney general to find the worst prisons, probably in the deepest parts of Mississippi, and send them there. I'm not saying what's right or wrong. I'm saying that this man found a way to do what he wanted to do with these people, despite Biden having done what he did. Because Trump can't reverse the commutations of those prison sentences. Just like Biden could have just straight up pardoned them, or he did pardon a lot of people. Biden did pardon, many people. You can't reverse the pardons either. So that's something that can be done. But one thing to keep in mind also is that many of you will say that, if it were Obama or Biden or even Kamala Harris, they wouldn't be able to get away with this stuff if it's to benefit the black community, because the folks who are in charge wouldn't carry it out faithfully. They would try to divert and subvert the president's will. And they might even just straight up, act like the president ever said to do it, and no one's there to enforce it. They say a lot of times that it's not that the laws on the books don't exist to protect us already as African Americans or descendants of American chattel slavery specifically. It's that the laws are not enforced. So the laws are there, but they're not enforced. And that is a very good point you make, my friend. Enforcement is the Achilles heel of having anything on the book. If you're going to say that you need to pay a bill, but I never enforce you to pay it, then there's no real actual threat of having to follow that law, right? Or that pay that bill. And that occurs in many cases. So Trump has also recognized this, and he's dealt with it also through an executive order. So we go right back to the list of executive orders that Donald Trump has put out already in his first week. Again, I'm not a fan necessarily of him. I'm not here to promote him. I did not vote for him, but I'm making clear to compare him to other presidents so that you can't come and tell me that presidents can't do anything for us. So when we look at this seventh executive order he wrote, he already comprehended, especially because of his experience. And again, this man was not a politician. He's only been in our presidential office one time. He learned a lot from that. And he had a lot of people around him that helped him figure out things as he came along. And I'm telling you, we're comparing him to Kamala Harris. We're comparing him to Biden and Obama. These folks got a lot more political history than Trump ever did. So to tell me that Trump had more experiential support than they did is crazy. But here's what he did. Trump realized that people who are in positions of policy, control, and influence who are not in favor of his particular views of the world may try to subvert or otherwise divert from doing what he wants them to do. So he signed an executive order that's called Restoring Accountability to Policy Influencing Positions Within the U.S. Government. And so essentially what this executive order does is it activates something that people have heard of as called Schedule F. But they renamed it with this executive order to Schedule Policy/Career. And essentially what the Schedule F does is it allows the president to convert nearly about, I think, identified 50,000 workers who can be reclassified and classified into essentially a type of job role that can be removed, that people can be removed from directly by the will of the executive branch or those who are listening to the executive branch. These folks have no protections from typical civil service jobs in terms of like unionization, representation, durability of role, things like that. And so what that allows or opens up is that if you want to get into one of these roles of being policy influencing or policy controlling and you don't follow through with the executive directive from the president, then you can be removed from your job that much easier. That's exactly what this executive order does that I'm talking about here at the very top, called the Policy/Career Appointment, formerly known as Schedule F, a job classification for appointments in the accepted service of the United States Federal Civil Service for permanent policy-related positions. The purpose of the provision is to increase the president's control over federal career civil service by removing their civil service protections and making them easy to dismiss, which proponents state would increase flexibility and accountability to the elected officials. It's widely criticized as providing a means to retaliate against federal officials for political reasons, impeding the effective functioning of government and providing risk to democracy. It has been estimated that tens or hundreds of thousands of career employees could be reclassified, increasing the number of political appointments by a factor of 10. Right. So what he's trying to tell you in this, what I'm saying in this, is that these people all of a sudden get converted. So now those things where I said that he doesn't have the direct control over doing himself through an executive order, he can just write an executive order that's a very clear and public demand or decree to people who do have that power to make those changes, and they will follow through with it, because if they don't, he can easily remove them from their job now. Now, that may not sound great. It might not sound democratic, but these people are honestly also not necessarily supposed to be going against the wishes of the president. So you get into a point where now you're getting more control over government. And again, if you want to get something done, you can get it done. Now, people will argue, well, that's not democratic, that's not ethical, that's not moral, you shouldn't do that. I'm not here to tell you that they should or shouldn't. I'm not even saying it has to be imparted in the same with the same vigor or depth that the Trump administration is doing it, but it's a tool that is legally viable to yield or to wield. So you do have a mechanism to get things done, whether it be for the Asians or it be for the black community. Trump is proving, like I said at the very top, presidents can do what we keep saying that they can't. They can find ways to get things done. And it's important to write and issue some of these executive orders regardless, because they know as candidates who become actual elected officials, that they need to support the people, the base, the folks who got them elected. And that those folks are looking to them to focus on and do what they said they would do. And I'll tell you very clearly, without playing this video, you know this famous video of Joe Biden saying very clearly, without any questions, comments, or concerns, what did Joe Biden say, y'all?
The African American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours.
That's Biden right there. He said he'd have our back, right? And if you go to the comment section, boy, listen, some people felt in their emotions about it. It's not that he said it, it's that he actually meant it. I keep replaying the video. I cried when I heard it the first time. And then, you know, all these other things, you know, about Joe's hitting the podium harder. When he said the African community stood up for me, I literally had goosebumps. Listen, everybody was really gunning for Joe to do something. And then everybody realized, once again, black people vote blindly. They vote on emotions rather than policy. We signed the contract before we read the terms of the agreement. People also came in and said, we know how well that's turned out for us. People also came in and said, y'all black folks get bamboozled. Remember our brother Obama, you know, these sorts of things, right? And so there were things that, you know, Trump could bamboozle his people on, but he ain't going to do that, I don't think, because he came into office swinging, right, on day one. So listen, the thing that leads us down this road to not holding them accountable to doing what they can, again, we know that these executive orders are not the end all be all in many cases, but they are virtue signaling. They are showing that you're going to do everything you can, and they are putting pressure on the elected politicians in the House and in the Senate that are in the same party to know that the president is not playing about this and you need to get on top of it. But if he's not even willing to write an executive order that even makes a decree that he supports certain things, then they probably going to think it's, you know, for play. Right. And these people typically are the leaders of the party when they get into the actual when they get into the presidency. So they are the leaders of the entire Democratic or Republican Party, the entire, you know, commission or committee. So the RNC or the DNC, the president who's in office at that time is basically the leader of that entire party. So they have all sorts of levers to pull both inside the government and outside within the political party to make sure that people who are being put on and they're getting into office under the Democratic or the Republican banner are the people who are going to listen to what the president's saying to do and are going to be in alignment with this agenda. Just like what, you know, many people know that essentially over the past 8 years or so, the Republican Party has become the party of Trump. And it's really falling in line with what he wants. And so they know that he's their most viable candidate right now. And so they roll with him. And a lot of the stuff that they adopted are reflective of Trump's will. Right. And similarly, you could do the same thing with Obama or Biden. Then you can run to me and say, well, it's not democratic because we need to have balance and we need to have voices and, you know, well-rounded, diverse opinions coming into the pulpit. Well, guess what? What we need in the black community is black policy. And if you keep using everybody else as a reason that we don't get what we need, even though this man wrote an executive order for Asians and LGBTQIA and those who identify as different genders and everybody else who's got a specific claim except the black folks, then you're never going to get what you need. And we're always going to remain at the bottom. And even when you claim, oh, we're not at the bottom, it's because you've been delusionalized to believe that the black middle class is the same as the white middle class, which is not. And I'll tell you, the numbers prove it. And even when you get into the black community and unpack that, and we talk about that in a different episode, you'll find that even black immigrants are not the same socioeconomic status as native blacks who have been here since, 1619. That stuff is different. And we had an entire movement back in 2023 working with the Office of Management and Budget, trying to get them to disaggregate the data on the black community to make it very clear that the black community is not a monolith economically. Oh, no. I'm not saying anything negative about my lovely Jamaican, Nigerian, Ethiopian, South African brothers and sisters who've come to this country or their mothers and fathers and nothing. I'm not saying anything negative about them. I'm saying that they move differently. I just did a whole video on how Hispanic and blacks move differently, and it plays out in the data of the businesses we start. And there's a reason for that. And it's similarly when you see these folks who run around talking about that black people are lazy, they don't do what they're supposed to, they're the reason that they're down, black people have harmed themselves, they ain't working hard enough, all this stuff that has led to them believing that we are a product of our own making. And I just told you, and I proved through 2 videos that we are not necessarily a product of exclusively our own making. Nobody is self-made. And what comes back to this, what I'm talking to you about right now, is that even these black CBC members, Congressional Black Caucus, who are in office, these folks are just moving along to get along because they like power just like any other animal in the animal kingdom. So they're just doing what they do, even though we put them in there to do something else. Okay, I'm getting all off track because I'm getting passionate because we cannot let these folks just run us amok, right? I am all over this right now. So understand that don't let them come back with these rebuttals that the president can't do X, Y, and Z alone. It takes Congress, or Congress wasn't going to let the president do that, or they, as in non-black folks, aren't going to let us have what we need. That ain't where you start or end the fight. You don't stop because you know someone's going to oppose you. That's the only point of a fight, is you're going to go against the opposition. If you stopped every time someone's going to oppose you, you never get anything. I bet you everybody would oppose you being in traffic because they rather drive without anyone around them, or they rather drive faster, but you in the fucking way. So what you gonna do? You gonna you gonna move, or you gonna groove? What you gonna do? You gonna get out the way, or you gonna keep it pushing? You gonna get what you came for, or you gonna sit down? And don't tell me you getting what you came for because you don't even know what you should have gotten because you ain't fought for it. You don't know what you came for other than to live. Anyway, first week of the 47th presidency. Day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mr. Trump has proven it doesn't take an act of Congress to make waves for your base. Even though half of those things that he's done might eventually get either rescinded by the next Democratic president, or they might get struck down by some court, he has proven that an executive order is a hell of a jumpstart to at least get the conversation going in the direction that you wanted to go for the people who supported you. And we've supported a lot of people, including Biden. And I'm not here to tell people who supported him that didn't have a reason at that time to believe that that was the best thing to do. That's a whole different discussion. But I am here to say that going forward, especially in the wake of the loss by Vice President Kamala Harris, in the wake of her loss, we have a lot of introspection to do and understanding what we should be holding these politicians accountable for, because there's a lot of people who held Donald Trump accountable for things that he already is getting done. And he ain't got nothing but one bill passed through Congress, and that was the Lake and Riley Act, I believe, right? And they already had that queued up. Guess how many bills we done had queued up? Guess how hard in the paint the Congressional Black Caucus has gone to get them passed. Guess how much they put at risk to get them passed. They ain't putting nothing at risk. Them boys gliding. The only way they got at risk is if they upset the Democratic establishment. And that means we need to upset the Democratic establishment so that our people are safe who are already in Congress fighting for us. But we're not doing none of that because they ain't fighting for us. So anyway, let me settle this down. I got a little passionate. I just appreciate you tuning in to talk about this, to understand that the Democratic Party has to take a lot of notes on what the Republicans just did. Got to take a lot of notes. And I'm not saying to do what they did. I said, look at the strategy they used to execute their will. And I'm not telling you to be immoral or otherwise illegal or wrong or caustic or otherwise problematic about how you get things done. What I'm saying is you got to move boldly in order to get bold things done. And that's it. So let's talk about this. I'll talk with all y'all very soon on the next topic. We got to keep it going. We got to construct the understanding so we can do this properly in 2028.